name is Melesa Johnson. I currently serve as the Director of Public Safety for the City of Kansas City, and I developed my passion for violence reduction and public safety at a very young age. I learned about the tale of two cities at a very young time in my life and realized that the trials and tribulations of folks in the neighborhood that I grew up with did not necessarily align with those of the students that I went to private high school with. And so really trying to get to the center and to the bottom of why such stark differences exist in various communities that are concentrated with different types of people. And that is how I became passionate about this work, and that passion has just grown ever since. You have your traditional factors, if you will, lack of well-paying jobs, lack of access to mental health resources, just the lack of opportunity in general, where you'll see a lot of where this crime is concentrated. But something that is really important to me that has captivated my attention is something that we don't often speak about, which are the deficiencies in a subculture that exists in our community. And by our community, I mean primarily the African American community. And if you drill down deeper amongst our young men, right? We are living in a time where, according to social media, reality TV, YouTube, and kind of this web atmosphere, that you don't have credibility if you are not a gangster. You don't have credibility if you are willing to jump off the porch. All of these monikers, all of these sayings that are really kind of prevalent in our community. And there's even studies and data out there that shows young people that come from environments where traditionally you would think the parents did everything right, two-parent household. They have the young person in a church congregation, after school education, all of these community kind of controls in place to try to prevent them from going down the road of criminality or violence. But yet the cultural pull that we experience and see glorified in our music and our movies and our TV shows still it tugs at our young people, and it's very, very difficult with young, impressionable minds to be able to overcome that. So that creates an environment where I'm 15 at the Chiefs Parade and I get into an argument and I feel like I need to resort to the highest level of violence because that is what I have seen, not only directly around me, but in all of the mediums through which I get my entertainment as well. Violence has become so normalized that it's in some folks' DNA, or at least they think it is, and those cultural realities are something that we have to confront, but probably one of the most difficult things that we can confront. We need to delegate some of these responsibilities to people that are credible messengers, those with lived experience, those that are able to resonate with the population that we are trying to reach, unlike anybody else. I love how I was raised and where I was raised, but I have never shot anybody. And so when I say put the gun down and start new, change your life, it only goes so far. But when you have somebody standing up that has actually walked that walk and been able to transcend those circumstances, it goes such a long way. But historically, government institutions, traditional institutions, even some of our nonprofit organizations have not been as comfortable with leveraging people with criminal experience. Where, in my opinion, that's probably one of the greatest tools that we can utilize in actually being able to connect with people at the center of crime, and then having them connect to resources that can transformatively change their lives. I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but lack of economic opportunity. I know that 31st and Prospect has been at the center of the news these past couple of weeks. It's been at the center of my mind for the past, I don't know how many years, because I live right around in that area, and I drive past regularly and see the unfortunate concentration of crime that is centered in a space where people had to fight to redevelop it. Nobody was really begging to redevelop that corridor, Don Maxwell and his crew and his company really had to roll up their sleeves and seek out opportunity to breathe life back into that corridor. But a couple of things are missing from that corridor that we don't talk about. We talk about increased police presence, increased prosecution. Do you know there's not a single sit-down restaurant in the immediate vicinity? We only have a couple of grocery stores, no massive retail stores that people can actually afford, which means there's no jobs. It's concentrated in that area. The post office that is right there in that corridor, sometimes I don't even know when it's open, right? And so the lack of opportunity in that corridor, it is a breeding ground for crime. On top of that, untreated mental illness, when we closed a lot of our mental health hospitals in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s in the state of Missouri, it created a huge void to where we don't have anywhere for people who are economically disadvantaged to actually go and receive care. University Health, Sam Rogers, Swope, they all have backlogs and wait lists for people trying to get compliant with their diagnosis and their meds. And so I'm very hopeful and fortunate that University Health is building this new 300-person capacity mental health facility for the community's use and benefit, as well as the municipal court and the police departments, etc. But the main two things that I see in areas with a high concentration of crime is lack of economic resources and untreated mental health issues. I struggle with that question because I fully recognize the tragedy, the true tragedy involved in both of those scenarios, both Chef Sean Brady and the unfortunate passing of Lisa Lopez Galvan. Good, kind-hearted people, weren't involved in any aspect of the criminal element, just putting on their pants one leg at a time, trying to pour back into communities that they love so much. But then I think the other side of that, understanding that a 15-year-old or a young person, however old they are, can have the capacity to reach such a high level of violence at a young age. And then being confronted with the harsh reality that the likelihood of them ruining the rest of their lives is very, very real. What incidents like that do for our entire community as a whole is bring awareness to things that people in this community have been dealing with for generations upon generations. And while it is tragic, it is unfortunate. I wish it would have never happened. Now we do see communities that have not been touched by crime to the same degree, understanding what some people have been dealing with and screaming about and yelling for help for since the beginning of their time. And so I will not stand here and act like it's a good thing. It's not. I will not act like it is progress, because it is not. It should have never happened. But the fact that these issues are on the forefront of everyone's mind, I do think that there is opportunity for resolutions in that, and I am not calling Chef Sean Brady or Lisa Lopez Galvan a martyr in any way, but we cannot allow the loss of their lives to be in vain. We have to do something with this, and we have to capitalize on the moment and actually force people to understand that a holistic approach is absolutely needed. If increased police presence and the risk of getting caught was truly a deterrent, neither one of those incidents would have ever happened. This building has cameras all around it. The Chiefs Parade had cameras with drones on them, live radio stations and news stations reporting live, 850 law enforcement officers on scene right there. The likelihood of getting caught in both of these scenarios was very high, but yet they still happened. And they still happened because we also have to instill hope. We have to give people something to look forward to, and we have to give people something to wish for. Victim resources. Asking a domestic violence victim to leave not only a toxic relationship, but sometimes their children. sometimes their safety, their security, the roof over their head, the place where they can lay their head at night. It is a huge ask. And unless we as leaders, government institutions, nonprofits, civic leaders actually put parameters in place that make it easier for people to leave domestic violence situations, they are going to continue to go underreported and under-prosecuted, and the offenders will not be held accountable. We have to understand the sensitivity and the fragility in some of these scenarios. And something as small as being able to keep my dog will keep me in a toxic relationship because I don't have the adequate help to find myself and my dog a new place to live. And so it's really those wraparound resources for victims, because if we fail them within those first couple of days after an incident happens, they will not deal with us. They will not cooperate, not only with the criminal legal system, but also government institutions as well. And we have to find more ways, more meaningful ways to service those that are doing the brave act of making an initial report in the first place. Now, the amount of domestic violence that we see amongst our young people is heartbreaking. I immediately think of our young sister, Amari Hughes, out in Grandview, who lost her life at a very, very young age at the hands of her significant other. We have to educate, have to proactively educate. We are still living in a time where if you listen to all of the rap music and all of the reality shows and whatnot, we are still circulating this thought, this train of thought that if he loves me, he'll be possessive. If he wasn't possessive, he doesn't love me. He or she, it goes both ways. And so we really have to do the intentional work of proactively educating our young people on what is love, what is healthy, what is a healthy relationship, and how you navigate reporting something like that to an adult that you trust. Absolutely. You have organizations that you're probably more familiar with, like Rosebrooks and Moxa, who is doing amazing work in getting us ready for the World Cup here in a couple of years, because when you have a massive concentration of individuals that have never seen each other in one space, and then you add intoxicating substances on top of that equation, naturally increased domestic violence is sure to follow. And so they have been invaluable in helping us get the reporting infrastructure up to par so that we can hold any domestic violence offenders in our community accountable. But then you have some that you may not be as familiar with. Synergy Services is one that comes to mind. New House, which is doing amazing work with safety planning and divorce attorneys and even child custody attorneys for our community that has been impacted by domestic violence. But then you have people like Justice Gatson, who is a woman of color, really kind of charting this unique lane of servicing domestic violence victims of color, because cultural competence matters in this work as well. Not every program can serve every victim or every resident. And I applaud Justice Gatson and her team for understanding that and for telling those stories in a very, very unique way, because all victims' stories and experiences are not the same. I would say your contributions to this world are not over, and we will never be able to experience the fullness of your light while you are in a space that is constantly dimming you. And we are here, we have you, we have your back, but know that you are so much more than your current circumstances. You are not defined by them. You are absolutely capable of overcoming them. And we need you to overcome them, because we need to experience all that you were destined to offer to the rest of us.